July 2021. So I'm not certain that that's putting any particular pressure on the NHS. And particularly when you look at the relative to the number of cases, it's not the number of cases is not resulting in hospitalizations, not even amongst the unvaccinated. So where's the effect of the vaccine? It's not clear, but we'll come on to this a bit more in a second. Now, if we go back to deaths then, and we look at double vaccinated deaths, 224, unvaccinated deaths, 165. It's still, if you only include the double vaccinated, it's still bigger. But here's the problem with it. If we, we have to use the Israeli data for this, really, to do this calculation. But if we take Pfizer as an example, Pfizer claims to have a 95% efficacy. So that's our baseline here. In Israel, in the latest data, the fully vaccinated population of Israel is 59%. That means 41% is everyone else, okay? And if we therefore work out, based on the 95% efficacy, we're expect, so 95% of the 59% of the fully vaccinated population comes to 56.05% of the fully vaccinated population would be protected if we believe what the government says. And 2.95% of the fully vaccinated population would be unprotected on the basis that the vaccine only has 95% efficacy. Remember, we're talking about what they're saying. This is not what I'm saying. So the hospitalizations and deaths, as you would expect, would come from that 2.95%. So we'll just work out a quick ratio here, which is 2.95 over 41. So we're going to call that the expected ratio. This is what we would expect to see. But and that would mean that as a percentage of the vaccinated, we would expect to see 77.2% fully vaccinated having problems, dying, and 92.8% of the people that are going to hospital that are dying. We'd expect to see that as this would be the expected proportion between vaccinated and unvaccinated. But in fact, based on the Israeli data, what we're seeing is 63% vaccinated and 37% unvaccinated dying. And so that actually, although we don't have the numbers in the UK data to do the calculation, this, when we look at the baseline figure, which is this, is quite similar. So what effect is the vaccine actually having at this point? If we're expecting to see a 7% of the deaths being in the vaccinated and the rest being in the unvaccinated, but in fact we're seeing 60% of the deaths in the vaccinated and 40% of the deaths in unvaccinated people, and we're seeing similar kinds of statistics in the UK, although it's not quite the same, but it's very close.
We could come up with two answers, Mike, couldn't we? We could come up and say that there's a serious problem here, or we could be saying that the fact the public isn't given accurate statistics and accurate analysis by the government into what's happening as a result of the vaccine program says that they don't want to get into this level of detail. So you're asking the questions that the government should be asking. Why isn't the government asking those questions? Because they are frightened of the answers, I'm going to suggest.
Well, indeed. And of course, we had the incident last week of Patrick Vallance getting the 60-40 proportions reversed and then he had to issue a retraction the following day on Twitter. So there seems to be this obfuscation, or I mean, it's a clear obfuscation because there's no way to compare like with like between various data sets. The data sets are incomplete. I mean, if we put that back on screen for a second, the point that was made to me when I was criticized for sort of partially retracting what I'd said with Technical Briefing 17 was that this whole basis of under 50s and over 50s, this separation between these two cohorts in these statistics is completely arbitrary. It's been completely made up. There's no medical reason, there's no immunological reason, there's no historical basis for this under 50s and over 50s division between statistics. And the argument that was made to me was that division has been deliberately chosen in order to skew the figures and make the picture look in a particular way. So, you know, this issue of the quality of the data, the availability of the data, the ability to compare data with various data sets, the fact that hospital bed occupancy, ICU occupancy, ICU and hospital bed availability over the last 40 years. We can't see any trends because this data isn't easily available. And even when it is available, they've changed the way that they've gathered the data, they changed the way they present the data. There's no way to actually get a proper picture on it.
Certainly for the ordinary person who's still occupied with everyday life and going to work, they need some help in looking at this data. And let's remind our audience that the MHRA, which says it's there to protect the health and safety of the UK population, has still not released any coherent and analytical data on its own yellow card vaccine adverse effect statistics. So the organisation that is the lead for protecting the public from dangerous medicines and vaccines has still not produced a single document showing its analysis into the safety of vaccines. Perhaps this is time, Mike, to introduce this gentleman. Now, UK Column has said that we're absolutely delighted that we've got some top world experts coming to us in order to comment on what they think is happening. And a few days ago, we were able to speak to this gentleman, Christian Perron, who's former chairman of the Specialised Committee on Communicable Diseases, and that's the High Council of Public Health in France. And he was a former member of the European group advising the World Health Organization. Now, this gentleman has spoken out, and of course, as a result of speaking out on the subject of vaccines, he's suddenly been removed from these very high-profile positions. But we're going to say the full interview on this will be available shortly. We've still got a little bit more editing to do before it's ready. But Mike, you've just done your detailed analysis into the British government's own data, but we've now got world-class experts coming and also challenging what's happening. Let's have a look at a little excerpt from that interview. Okay, and can we just press a little bit further? If they're not vaccines, what would you call them?
It may be genetic modifiers. I don't know exactly the good term on the scientific point of view, but when you inject messenger RNA to produce a huge amount of spike proteins, a fragment of the coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 virus, you don't control the process. And the problem is that in human cells, we know that RNA may go back to DNA. Normally, it's from DNA to RNA. It's a little bit, maybe a little bit difficult to understand for a general audience, but it may go in the reverse way because we have in our chromosomes, in our genome, genes in our DNA coming from retroviruses for millenniums or centuries. They're animal origin, and they can code for enzymes which can code in the reverse side. So we know now, it's officially published, but now we find in the human genome sequences of DNA corresponding to the RNA of the virus. So it's a proof that what I said in December in a public letter saying that it was dangerous to inject these products, now it's confirmed. But all the governments continue. For me, it's a great mistake.
So, is there a pandemic? Was there ever a pandemic? But as well as that, should the unvaccinated be afraid of the current variants that are out there and the coming variants?
Exactly the reverse. The vaccinated people are at risk for the new variants and transmit it. It's proven now in different countries. So vaccinated people should be put in quarantine and should be isolated from the society. And unvaccinated people are not dangerous. Vaccinated people are dangerous for others. It's proven in Israel now, as I'm in contact with many physicians in Israel. They have a big problems. Now, severe cases in hospitals are among vaccinated people. And in UK also, you had a large vaccination program, and also there are problems. But the Delta variant is not very it's not very dangerous. All the variants since last year are less and less virulent. It's always a story of infectious diseases.
So a very interesting and powerful interview with Professor Peron. And let's remember that he was originally in charge, if you like, of the French vaccine system. He was involved in the policy. And as he said at the beginning of our interview, he believes in vaccines. But in the case of the vaccines that are being presented to the population in France and UK and worldwide at the moment, he is saying these are dangerous. So we've got a professional who has now looked at the evidence of what is being presented to the public, and he's warning of the dangers. So I don't know whether Alex would like to comment at all.
Yes, I believe that I'm speaking here and I believe that the sound is good, though the video quality is not excellent. But as you announced, Brian, we are going to go to town on this whole series with French experts. So one of the things I'm doing is ensure that a transcript is available for the website by the time the video is released, because he does have sometimes some quite strong French idioms and pronunciation, and we've had feedback already that people would like subtitles. Well, transcript is more accurate and less effort, actually, so we'll do that rather than subtitles. But in a bit that I've just transcribed this morning, Professor Christian Peron goes on to say we should by now have reliable serological tests. This is where you draw a blood sample and look for bodies that your body has produced against a virus if you had the disease recently. The problem is, says Professor Peron, that no lab in the world has developed a reliable serological test. That's terrible. I think that the scientific community, owing to some conflicts of interest, did not want reliable serological tests, because if we had done that, we would be able to see today that most of the British, German, Spanish population are now immune. But he showed that, he says, it would be a big one for the marketing by the pharmacological companies, because they would then not be able to impose the vaccination policy, because I think that most people in Europe and other countries worldwide are already immunized. There is herd immunity. To me, this is a scandal, sabotage. So speaks the man who wrote the French vaccination policy.
Yes, I'm afraid, Alex, your audio is dropping out quite a bit, so I don't know whether you might like to try to reconnect and see if we can do a little bit better with that. But thanks for those comments.
Yeah, and we will say full interview with Christian Peron will be available in the next few days, and it contains a lot of really startling information, and there are more of the experts to follow. Well, why should the UK government and other governments be getting panicky about young people? This headline from Sky probably says it all. COVID-19 younger age groups will take longer to vaccinate than older as enthusiasm wanes. And it goes on to say there's been a reduction in the numbers of younger people taking up their invitation to get vaccinated, as that age group sees the highest number of COVID-19 cases. So a typical headline, because it's got the fear factor in there that apparently because there's more cases, younger people should be afraid and therefore go and be vaccinated, whereas the indications are that, of course, the virus is not dangerous for those young people. But Sky, following the policy, and then they've reinforced it with quotes from this gentleman, Raqib Ali, the honorary consultant, Oxford University Hospitals NHS Trust. Without any data, any graphs, any statistics, any information of any sort, he simply gives his opinion to provide the meat of Sky's reporting. So this is what he says. As a lot of this age group are getting infected, some think they are immune anyway, so they don't need the vaccine. The risks are lower for younger people if they get COVID-19, so some don't think they need the vaccine, but they still do. No data to support that claim, Mike, whatsoever. Some have also developed COVID in the interim after the first dose, so they've had to delay getting their second, which could be affecting numbers. I particularly like that one. So you get vaccinated, which is going to protect you, but it doesn't. Well, you need 2 doses, and then Is there evidence that it protects you fully? No, there isn't.